for most of my peers, those two paths were very distinct and separate. They were focused on building their career in whatever they were going to do, as well as on the other side, they would be involved with the MSA, different Muslim charities, and things like this. But all of these were kind of two distinct pieces. And we know Islamically that when you do things with the right intentions, you kind of get to double dip a little bit, where you can make the intention to succeed in this world, but you can also tie that intention back to serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through benefiting other Muslims, through being a good representation of Muslims in society.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Ahmed Ammar and I welcome you to the first episode of Ruh Revival, the brand new podcast initiative brought to you by the McMaster Student Association. This podcast, as the name suggests, aims to be a source of Islamic revival for the McMaster student community and the broader Muslim community at large. We hope through this podcast to answer some of the burning questions in the minds of the Muslim youth in the West. And of course, we're not going to have all the answers, and so we're going to be hosting a multitude of Muslim leaders, shuyukh, and people that we can draw inspiration and guidance from. Today we are going to start with what I would say is the most pressing question in the minds of Muslim university students, practicing Muslim university students, and that is the question of how am I able to use my studies to further my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to be able to serve the Muslim community, to be able to invest or to be able to utilize that which I have invested most of my time, which I am investing most of my time on for current university students, to serve the Muslim community, to make some, meaningful impact on the Muslim community. And with us to help us answer that question is Mohamed Moussa, whom most of you may not know, but you will know him definitely through his Tarteel AI app. I'm going to start with a brief introduction of Brother Mohammed. So Mohamed Moussa is the founder and CTO of Tarteel. Tarteel is the world's first AI Quran companion, helping Muslims around the world memorize the Quran. He is extremely passionate about working on products that bring measurable value to people and communities on a global scale. He has previously worked at leading technology and education companies, including Facebook and Coursera, and now he enjoys the privilege of dedicating his expertise and passion to developing the Islamic technology ecosystem. So, without further ado, I guess we can get started with our podcast. And I think this kind of summary, gives the gist of, your journey, but I was wondering if you wanted to, talk to us a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Sure. I'll just give one small correction. I'm the co-founder of Tarteel. Alhamdulillah, I have some great co-founders along with me.
Apologies.
No worries. So, alhamdulillah, I grew up in Canada, born in Waterloo region, and I ended up studying at the University of Waterloo. And for me, university was a very interesting time. I think for most young people, they find that they develop a lot during university. And so for me, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in terms of my career. I decided to study engineering, and I wasn't quite sure when I entered university what kind of engineering that I wanted to do. I studied in a little bit of a broader engineering program at the University of Waterloo. And so for me, university was a time of self-discovery in terms of what are my interests and what are my career aspirations and what is it that I want to achieve in that regard. At the same time, university for me personally was the time where I really started to focus on my faith, focus on building my iman, and learning what my role as a Muslim can be in terms of serving society. So I'd been involved a little bit with MSA in my high school and different projects and initiatives and volunteering throughout kind of my younger years and my high school years. But university was a time where I really started to increase my studies Islamically, increase my involvement in the community, and so on and so forth. And so for most of my peers, those two paths were very distinct and separate. They were focused on, building their career in whatever they were going to do, whether it's becoming an accountant or a lawyer or a business person or whatever, an engineer or whatever role that they were going to pursue, as well as on the other side, they would be involved with the MSA, they might be involved with different Muslim charities and different kind of projects like that. Some of them started to get involved with dawah and things like this. But all of these were kind of two distinct pieces of most of the individuals that I saw. And we know Islamically that when you do things with the right intentions, you kind of get to double dip a little bit, where you can make the intention to succeed in this world, but you can also tie that intention back to serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through benefiting other Muslims, through taking care of your family, through being a good representation of Muslims in society. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people in the West, either they really get it or they really don't. I have a good friend of mine when I started working on Tarteel, who he was telling me once that he was quite jealous, actually, of jealous in a good way, envy, I suppose, but he was jealous of the fact that I had this opportunity to work on Tarteel, where he said, this is an Islamic project, and so this is so much better in terms of what you get to work on during your day-to-day job. Alhamdulillah, there are lots of benefits with that, which I can talk about, but one of the things I reminded him at that time was he was working a regular engineering job, but in the end of the day, if he's working to make money, halal income for himself, to eventually take care of a family, to be a positive benefit in society, to not be on welfare and to not be one always asking for handouts and for help, this alone is a solid intention for him to have, and it's an Islamically oriented intention. And so crafting that understanding of where does Islam fit within, how you're going to build your career, I think that's one of the first things that, we're going to talk about Tarteel, I'm sure, and we're going to talk about my journey with Tarteel and being able to work on, building Islamic products for Muslims directly, and that's an amazing privilege that I have, alhamdulillah. But at the same time, I do want to set the stage that this is not the only route to serving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's something that regardless of what you're doing, I always think about the opportunity that I have with Tarteel in the context that this is probably the biggest opportunity I'm ever going to be given in terms of the scale of the impact that I can have to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through serving His creation. And it would also be the biggest L probably that most people could ever possibly take if they did this with the wrong intentions and they did this the wrong way and they focused on it in the wrong way. So, with great opportunity, there's also that great opportunity for loss if you don't capitalize on it properly. And that's something to keep in mind as well. Whatever scale of ways that you can engage with the Islamic community, you have to think about what are my intentions and always keep renewing those intentions. So in university, I focused on mainly on my taking that path that everyone else was taking in terms of focus on doing my coursework, working on side projects, trying to improve myself for my career, and then at the same time becoming involved with the MSA, becoming involved with different Muslim organizations, and trying to have an impact that way. And I think one of the nice things about technology is that it gives you a lot of opportunities to kind of easily be able to bridge into an area where a lot of Muslim organizations are actually lacking. So lots of organizations need help with their websites and need help with all kinds of software related challenges. And when I decided in my career that I wanted to specialize into software engineering, that's when I started to see a lot of opportunities open up where I was able to actually combine the two things together. So that's where my university journey started to kind of combine those two things. And then from there, I had a little bit of a period of time where I did the standard secular career, working in companies like you mentioned, Facebook and Coursera and whatnot. And then alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to transition to work on Tarteel with all of my energy.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. So, mashallah, I can imagine the difficulty of the journey that you've summarized. I think I wanted to ask about, you mentioned how in university you were basically working on side projects, being involved in the MSA. I understand at some point you're even the MSA president, so you're heavily involved in the MSA for many, I guess, extended periods during your academic career. A question that members in the MSA especially face is the ability to balance all of it. Being able to excel both in their academic studies while at the same time giving their best, I guess, for the Muslim community. That's a struggle that I personally faced, and I'm sure a lot of people face. So I was just wondering, like, what were some ways you used to basically establish that balance?
Yeah, so I think when people ask about balance, they're looking for kind of that solution. I'm going to tell you, okay, you wake up for Fajr at this time, you do this, and everything is going to fall into place. The truth of it is that's not how it works. I think there's always room to be moving towards a better balance, but I think a lot of that comes with very ruthless prioritization in terms of what it is that you want to focus on. As you mentioned, I did actually serve as the president of my MSA at one point in my studies. It was right at the end of my degree, and one of the things that came about as part of that time was there was a lot of ambitions and a lot of things that I wanted to achieve for the MSA, and that took, legwork, that took time, that took all kinds of execution on different initiatives and different projects, and, thinking about different problems and talking to different people and all the things that were required to actually make those things a reality. Being able to balance that kind of thing with, your studies, with everything that you're trying to achieve, to some degree, you're a human and you have a limit in the amount of time you have. Usually the only way you can actually unlock some of that is with money, where you start bringing on more people. That's how companies work, right? You start out with a few people, you start making more money, and then you use that money to hire more people to allow you to achieve something bigger. In the context of an MSA, I think the biggest thing you can be doing is finding and training and supporting volunteers. So I was very lucky when I was president that I had serving with me in my executive team a number of very passionate, talented individuals who were very motivated to also achieve the same goals that I was setting out. And so there's no way that I could have done anything that I did achieve during my time as the president of the MSA without those kind of people around me. I think that's one of the first things towards understanding balance, is understanding what is it that you want to achieve, what are you struggling to work on, and what are ways that you can leverage the resources around you, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's your family, your community, etc., in order to actually unlock more ability to achieve things. So whether it's delegating tasks within the MSA, finding people who are very passionate about certain tasks and certain roles, giving them that opportunity to actually grow in that space. When you unlock those opportunities for people, then they'll step in and help. And even with building a business, it's the exact same concept, where you want to look for those opportunities where other people can come in and help. In terms of a personal balance, though, I think this really comes down to understanding what it is that you want to achieve. So that's that time when I was MSA president. One of the things I decided was not that important was my studies, actually. I know this is not what some people will want to hear. Obviously, I still needed to pass all my courses and do okay and everything. But alhamdulillah, if I wanted to be a strong student, I was a strong student. I could achieve very good grades and everything like that. For most of my degree, the balance has been deciding how much I want to focus on something and what the trade-off is between that and something else. So even without taking into account the time when I was, MSA president or anything like that, even earlier on in my studies, usually one of the things I let go a little bit of was actually focusing on grades to a degree. So instead of being like a 80s, 90s student, I would be, let's say, a 70s, 80s student. But then with that extra time that unlocked for me to, instead of studying or instead of focusing on things, I wasn't just like playing video games and chilling and like doing nothing. I spent a lot of time actually working on my own projects, trying to find opportunities where I could grow my software skills. I attended all kinds of hackathons and all kinds of different things like that. I spent a lot of time learning the craft of the career that I really wanted to go into. And that allowed me to accelerate very quickly within my secular career studies. Even though my university wasn't teaching me exactly the things I needed to get the jobs I did, I was ahead of the curve in terms of many of my classmates by my third or fourth internship, where I was getting the kind of jobs that people felt were, the top of the ladder in terms of those jobs. And it wasn't because I was the highest ranking student in the class. I was somewhere in the middle, maybe, like in the top half, but still towards the middle. And a lot of that focus came from spending all that time learning what I needed to in order to be really good at the jobs I was looking for, in order to build up the experience that would allow me to actually get those jobs. And so even when I was MSA president, it's very similar. I decided that I needed to focus on what needed to be done for the MSA. I felt that was a priority at the time. I had no intention of going to grad school, or I didn't really care about whether it said Dean's List or honor roll or whatever on my degree. So long as I was getting the degree, everything was good. There's no risks there or any problems there. I felt that that's the balance that I could strike, and then I was able to invest a lot of time into the MSA. And so I think that's one of the things. People look for balance and think that everything is going to just settle out and be okay. I can do everything. Like, I want to be going to the gym, and I want to be doing great in school, and I want to spend time with my friends, and I want to contribute to the MSA, and I want to do all of these things. You can do all of them to a degree, but you have to figure out really what's most important. If something is really important and it's going to need time, likelihood is at some point you're going to start needing to take away from something else. So you have to figure out, again, what are the safeguards you need to put in place that you don't take away too much, and how do you manage that balance, and even how do you combine stuff. Great thing, I wanted to go to the gym, I wanted to hang out with my friends. Get your friends to come to the gym with you. start double dipping, and so if you can do those kind of things as well, it helps manage that balance.
That's so true. Yeah. Go to the gym, or even go to halaqas. Like that for me is a big cheat code. If I want to spend time and socialize, and I want to attend halaqas, that's the best possible thing to do, is to combine them. I think that what you touched upon, like, it's very important, the idea that I guess that myth of being able to, by achieving balance, reach excellence in everything that you pursue is, as I said, is a myth. It's not something that's like, you have to be a bit pragmatic. I guess that pragmatism makes it, I don't know if that's a word, pragmatism? Pragmatism, yeah, there you go. Sorry, second language. English as a second language. Pragmatism, that's what we said, right? Yeah, that pragmatism is something that we need to work on, because I think a recurring model that you see in the university space, in the MSA space more specifically, is a lot of us, myself included, had our quote-unquote spiritual revival. That's right, or Ruh Revival, after we entered the university, after we decided what our career would be, which is a huge thing to decide at the age of 17. Like, a lot of people start practicing in university, and they quickly, I guess, go to like something like the MSA and try to, I guess, do as much as they can to make up for lost time. And in an attempt to, and they keep saying, okay, I'll be able to balance these two, I'll be able to excel. And more often than not, you see that the thing that gets the short end of the stick sometimes is the academics. And that, I guess, generates a source of like regret. And that's why you see a lot of people going through an MSA phase, meaning that after they graduate, it's like they're completely burned out, very like diminished, return to the Muslim community. That's something that, like you mentioned, is just very important to define the goals and to remember that some things you'll have to, I guess, withhold, like in terms of how much you can give, so you can give much more in the future. And that's something that I personally struggle with. I know a lot of people do as well. So you mentioned earlier that you were able to get some of the more sought after positions during your undergrad, and you were actually able to continue with these companies even after you graduated. And this is a common theme in people, specifically in software, because there's a huge, I guess, that difference between the smaller companies and bigger companies, but you can apply it to many other industries. And it's the idea that, I'm going to work hard, this many X number of years, so that I'd be able to set myself up financially, so that I could then start to give more of my time to help Islam, whatever way my career lets me, or my skill set allows me for. But you and I, we see a lot of people who will go into these companies with that mindset, and then once they're in these companies, they never leave. It becomes a lot more difficult. So it's interesting to me, and I wanted to see, I guess, I wanted to find out more about how, I guess, what was going through your mind when you were in, like, throughout that process, and I guess leading up to the point where you were actually able to, I guess, branch off and start doing your own thing.
Yeah, So a lot of people have this idea in their mind of I'm gonna reach this level of job, or I'm gonna graduate, or I'm gonna get married and start a family, and then I'm gonna get into Islamic work, or I'm gonna make this much money, or my salary is gonna be this, or whatever. Like, they set some kind of threshold for themselves, at which point they say, okay, I'm gonna start getting involved with the community, I'm gonna start doing like Islamic work, these kind of things. For me, I always like to go back to the concept of zakah. So on our wealth, we have an obligation to pay 2.5% when we're above a certain amount towards the community, supporting people with that money from zakah. And I think one of the interesting things as well with zakah, which is an important preface to put here, is not everyone needs to pay zakah. Everyone needs to pay zakah once they pass a certain threshold. But I think that threshold is relatively low. And I think that's a really important thing for people to keep in mind now when we translate this concept. I always think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave me wealth, but He also gave me all kinds of other things. He gave me, physical capabilities. He gave me intellect. He gave me my health. He gave me family and community. All these things that I have that are blessings in my life. And even though there's no explicit zakat that's been placed on them, I always think about, I have some obligation to basically give back from these things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. And again, that threshold is very low. So I don't think this idea of waiting until you hit this point or that point or whatever, beyond really the base level of stability that you need, that this concept is actually true. I think that at any point in time, people should be thinking about how can I be giving back to my community and benefiting the ummah with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given me. So for me, that's something that I've carried with myself for a long time. And that's something I was applying even when I was in university in terms of trying to give back with my time. The other thing is, it's like zakah, we also have sadaqah. So the more you can do, the better. So you have to give that minimum, and that's a bare level of commitment that you should be doing. But obviously, the more you give, the better it is. So waiting until reaching this point or that point is something that I think people take it the wrong way in terms of believing that there's a guarantee that they're going to get to that point. Like I'm going to graduate, and then all of a sudden I'm going to be free. I'm going to have so much time. Well, if you look at the people who just graduated, well, now they're commuting to work and they're busy with work and they have different responsibilities, and then they're looking to get married and they're speaking with people, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with relationships and this, and then they have kids, and that's keeping them busy, and there's always going to be these obligations for the rest of your life. And making that assumption that at some point all of a sudden you're going to become available to do this kind of work when you haven't built that foundation for yourself, I think it's the wrong approach. So people really should be thinking about, okay, what do I feel is a reasonable commitment based on my own situation, and trying to start doing that as early as possible, and combining it in with their career. The other really interesting thing is being in a Western society, there's actually a lot of opportunities to contribute in whatever way that you find yourself within the Islamic community, tying in your career. And this is actually what I did with my journey from the beginning, and I found all kinds of cases where they interplay. If I just keep an eye out for them and take advantage of them, there's a lot of opportunities to serve with my kind of career focus. So I remember one of the things I did for my MSA at one point, we used to host these iftars during Ramadan where people can come, and the food was free for anybody who's fasting. They can come and break their fast with the community. So where does all the money come from for the food? The MSA has to fundraise this money. And so one of the things I did at that time is I built a little website. It's called a Ramadan Hub, and it had like prayer times, and it had like all kinds of information to help you with Ramadan local context. And then I went to a bunch of the local halal restaurants and businesses, and I asked them to basically sponsor like some money for the iftars as like an advertising fee, and I would put them on the website. So the MSA would advertise the website to the community, and that restaurant would be featured on the website, and so they would basically, you know, get some benefit from that in terms of advertising. And I was able to raise a bunch of money for the MSA with that initiative. And that's like a very simple way where I took my career focus and I applied it towards a way that I can actually serve my, you know, Muslim community. And I see a lot of this now. Like I'm involved with some masajid, and one of the things I see is masajid have lots of tasks as well that they end up needing, whether it's like help with IT, help with like HR, help with legal, accounting. There's all kinds of engineering projects that end up coming about in terms of building things. They need help with tech. Like there's a lot of areas where the masjid can actually benefit. Even just the masajid as a one institution, but even there's other outlets again that you can work with, where you can bring your career and be involved. We have, you know, Muslim charities involved with social work. We have Muslim charities involved with like humanitarian relief. We have all kinds of different initiatives going on, food banks and all kinds of things, where I think most people would be relatively challenged to actually find themselves in a career where there's no benefit that they can be giving back just from their career perspective to their community. And so I think if people are looking for a way to start, I think that's the easy way. Again, talking about the idea of, you know, double dipping on the benefits there. Get more experience with what you need to do for your career while also helping your community, and you're doing it in a way that's strategic, in the sense that, you know, you're uniquely positioned to do that. If the masjid needs help doing their tax filings, they're not going to hire the plumber, they're not going to hire the engineer, they're not going to hire the doctor or the lawyer or the business person or anybody who's not specialized in that area. They need a certain kind of help. And so finding yourself in that position where you have a unique skill set allows you to actually give back in a very unique way. The other thing I think was important for me as part of my different internships and going through my career was always understanding as well, how do I live Islam on the job? I had the opportunity to work at a team at Facebook where my manager was Catholic from the Philippines. And I remember at the end of my internship, actually, you know, we're saying our goodbyes. I mean, we had a very good relationship. One of the things he actually told me was he admired how like I had that calendar block for like Jummah, and how I would like go and pray and stuff like that during the day and stuff like that. And even like, you know, halal food and everything, like he saw that I'm Muslim, that I'm practicing Muslim. He saw how I, you know, engage with my religion just as part of my day-to-day job. And that was something for him that he actually really admired. And I think there's lots of those opportunities. I remember I worked at a company where it was a startup, and you know, tech startup culture, there's this idea of like happy hours and all this kind of thing, right? And so the company used to like, you know, buy alcohol and like have these like social times and stuff like this, where everybody is you know, some people are drinking and you know, people are socializing and stuff like this. And I remember like, you know, I kind of, at that job again, people, you know, they had to see Jummah and praying and halal food and all this kind of stuff. So they all saw, okay, this guy doesn't drink alcohol, doesn't want to be near alcohol, like all this kind of thing. And again, I was a very strong performer at that job. The company was very happy with me. And so they wanted me to actually feel involved in the company and feel like connected. And one of the things I started doing is sometimes to work, I would bring Barbican. So they would see like Barbican, if anybody doesn't know, it's like a non-alcoholic, like flavored, like non-alcoholic beer. And so they would see me, you know, bringing that and everything and drinking that instead. And they wanted me to feel included, and they were very happy with my performance. So the CFO of the company actually went and like found a halal grocery store on his own, and like went there and picked up like cases of Barbican and stuff like this for the office. And again, that's one of the ways where, like, if you're trying to see about, okay, how can I be engaging positively with my society, and how can I be engaging positively in the West and doing dawah and like, you know, make people understand Islam and have good experience with Islam. Well, do your work with ihsan, be the best you can be in your role, and also live your Islam and be confident in doing that. And that's going to have a huge impact in terms of the people around you, what they're going to see, how they're going to experience Islam through you. And you know, inshallah, that will have an impact on them. I know a few brothers that have a company, and I really respect these brothers. They run their company very strictly on Islamic principles in terms of how they do business, how they deal with customers, all kinds of things. And but they hire, like, it's not a Muslim product or anything like this. It's just that the founders are Muslim. They choose to operate their business with certain principles, but they hire anybody who's the right fit for the job. And I actually bumped into you know, the CEO of that company. I bumped into him last night, and I was chatting with him quickly when I bumped into him, and he was telling me they have this employee who 2 months ago he actually reverted. And like they weren't, you know, they weren't preaching to him, they weren't doing anything. Like, it's just they go to work, they live Islam, they build a company, they do good work. People come, they see that, and they admire it, and they ask questions, and they learn. And so even from a dawah perspective, there's so much opportunity to be combining this. Even if you're not like taking extra hours to like go volunteer in the masjid or this charity or this organization or whatever, even just directly in your work, there's so much opportunity to be having a positive impact in society.
I think it's an important thing that you touch upon is the fact that I think a lot of us, especially when, like, in the first job, maybe, like, we're so worried about, I guess, we don't want to stand out the wrong way, and we just want to make it. And there's some concessions that people make, some compromises, and like stories like this one. Subhanallah, like, I felt this as well. If you're a strong performer, like these minor things, like half an hour extra for lunch on Friday, or that's not gonna really affect you that much. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed to live in a society where these things are, I guess, some of the positives of the inclusivity talk is actually this. And yeah, like you mentioned, I had, subhanAllah, throughout my work experience, you always get these like admiration, like positive messages when people find out about the fact that, you know, you have to take like 10 minutes during work, and especially like if you pray on time. I remember one time I was telling someone, I was explaining to him the prayers, and then the next day he's like, Ahmed, where are you? Like, are you going to be late for your prayer? It's actually very interesting. Something that I admire, I think maybe in the West, like seeing this kind of dedication to us, like to them, like not knowing much about Islam, it's more about the commitment than it is about what Islam is specifically. But subhanAllah, that could be I guess you could say that the lack of attention that people put to religion is actually good for us, because we stand out like much more easily. Yeah. Just any little bit of thing, and people come and asking, because I think like that's something that we struggle with, and even despite having the answer, I think a lot of Muslims struggle for that reasoning, finding that reason. So subhanAllah, I can only imagine I guess how other people look at us when they see, I guess, oh my God, 5 times a day, I can't imagine. SubhanAllah, after some time, it doesn't really feel like much of a commitment, but SubhanAllah. So for Tarteel, I was just curious. So I think a lot of people working in the software, or like people with software skills, you would look at Tarteel as an app that, okay, maybe it could be like a side project. So you might not be able to progress it as fast, but it's something that you could theoretically manage while still having a full-time job. So I was just wondering, and I, from what I understand, you're not the only person who quit I guess a lucrative position. I think a lot of, like many of your team members also did the same. So why do that full-time rather than, I guess, going the conventional route of just doing it on the side?
Yeah, this is a good question, and this is, I think, comes to the core of really what we're trying to do. So for me, I started working on what turned into Tarteel during my undergrad. It was really, I had a problem for myself, which is, I come from an Arab background, but my Arabic was pretty weak, and I would always have this issue of like, I go to the khutbah, the imam gives like 30 minutes of talking. In the end, like he mentioned something interesting, and I remember like 2 words from the ayah or something, and that's it. Or like, I'm trying to remember this ayah that I was thinking about, and again, like I only remember part of it, or I remember the whole thing, but I don't remember where in the Quran it is or anything like that. And so I had the issue where I want to search it up, but I was terrible with the Arabic keyboard, like, very bad, and it's not really going to work out for me to just sit there and trying to type out what I'm thinking and then like search for this from the Quran. And so I was like, well, I know what it is, I can say it, like I can recite for you half the ayah, or I can tell you a few words, or whatever it is with my voice. I should just be able to like find it instantly from the Quran like that. And so that's really what started for me this whole journey that eventually turned into Tarteel, was solving that specific problem of searching the Quran using your voice. And until today, we have that feature and that functionality in the app where you can actually search the Quran using your voice. All you have to recite is even like a single word, and it'll pull up for you all the ayahs that match and everything like that. But I started working on this, and Tarteel itself as a company went through various stages, because there was a big question for us in terms of how can we actually move this project forward for the benefit of people. In the beginning, I would build out this app. It was called Iqra at the time, and I built out this app. Some people started downloading it, and it was entirely free, no ads, no money involved or anything. And I didn't want donations. I was like, this is costing me very little to run this right now. I'm building it on my spare time. Like, I just want to build this, and I want to get the rewards from it, and that's it. And I would get people even reaching out, like, I want to donate and stuff like this. How can I donate? And I tell them, like, I don't want donations, like, and this kind of thing. Eventually, though, like, we realized there's a very large space of problems that could be solved using this kind of technology, which is speech-to-text technology, for helping people to actually search the Quran and even to memorize the Quran, which is the area where now, alhamdulillah, we have Tarteel, which is the world's leading Quran AI companion, which is able to listen to you recite and actually follow along word by word with your recitation, catch mistakes, and then even like keep track of those mistakes, and then help you see where in the Quran you're stronger and weaker, where you should be focusing for memorization, etc. And so when we started kind of going that direction of understanding the opportunity of what we could build, one of the big questions was, right now, how can we actually make this a reality? Like, we have these ideas, but we're sitting here working on the side. There was some more volunteers that came and got involved with the project, including like some of my co-founders, and we're all working on it still in a non-profit volunteer capacity. And our progress with building it out was pretty slow. It becomes a problem when you're working, 40 hours a week or whatever on a role that's, using your mind and it's taxing and everything, and then you're trying to dedicate like another 5-10 hours or whatever it is a week, or 20 hours or whatever it is. A, those are not your best hours, because you already spent all that time on your job, and B, like, it's only so many hours, and it's kind of a distracted way. When your mind is on something all the time, is different than like when you keep coming back and forth between it. And so we really struggled with finding people to actually do work on a committed basis to move the project forward. And at that point, that's when we started exploring different funding models, and we actually ended up deciding that the only appropriate way that Tarteel is ever really going to be a thing that people can actually benefit from and use on a massive scale is if people are dedicated to this on a full-time basis, really focusing all of their effort and time and thought in terms of this space. And the other thing is, to build AI, it's expensive. Right now, I think with ChatGPT and things like that, people are getting more and more aware within broader society of like, how expensive some of this is to actually build AI, but also with a lot more hype around this stuff, there's also like just a lot more being built with a limited quantity of chips. So securing compute and everything is a challenge, and you need to be able to lock in, like, you know, or purchase for yourself like your own machines, and it's quite expensive.
And it happened like during the peak, what's it called? Peak mining season. Like, I think that's when you guys were developing the app, right?
Yeah, so even when we started, it was much easier to get compute than it is now. Like now, you need to be, you know, paying a few $100,000 for your own machines, or you need to be locking in like a few $100,000 or $1 million commitments just to be able to secure the compute you need to be training on a regular basis, new models and things like that, let alone all the other challenges with developing this kind of thing. But we realized, like, this is not like a side project that you do 5 hours a week. This is like a serious thing where if it's going to exist, it needs resources. And so that's when we started trying to understand, what is it going to take to make Tarteel like actually have an impact on the world? What is that going to take from us individually, as well as from the community, as well as like what do we need to action on? I think that's one of the biggest things that people struggle with in the Islamic space, which we're trying to solve as well, not just for ourselves but for everybody, is building that ecosystem of support. One of the things we always look at in the tech space is Silicon Valley. You know, everybody wants to go to San Francisco and the Bay Area and work at FANG and whatever and all this stuff. A lot of why Silicon Valley is what it is because you had certain people build, you know, category-defining companies, and then people left those companies. So those companies got lots of money, so there's funds. Those people also, some of them left those companies and went and started other companies, so there's talent and experience and that kind of thing. And then they built accelerators like Y Combinator and things like that. They built out all these VC firms. They built out all the kind of communal infrastructure that's needed to really build a startup hub, to build the ecosystem around it. And this is the thing that we fundamentally lack within the Islamic space. How many like successful Islamic technology projects can you think of? You know what I'm saying? Especially, I'm not even talking about like some guy made an app with 1 million downloads. I'm talking about like somebody like when you think about, you know, Google and Facebook and Apple and whatever, how many of those kind of category defining companies are there working on Islamic projects? How many firms can you find that will support you with capital, support you with experience? How many entrepreneurs exist in this space who've actually done it before and can help you grow or advise you? Or, you know, how many employees are there to come on board and invest their time in this space? All of this is lacking right now. And so one of the things that we are trying to focus on is becoming one of many, inshallah, category defining companies in this space, and then understanding how we can also be supporting the rest of the ecosystem so that it can all grow around us. It's not like a one team or one man or one company task that's at hand. If we want to, you know, revive the Islamic golden age, there needs to be an entire culture and ecosystem of pursuing this kind of success for the sake of the ummah in this way. And I think that's one of the things as well, like if you think about the Islamic golden ages, you had people who were scholars, but they were also the ones who were inventing new things for astronomy, who were inventing new things for like health and science and all kinds of different disciplines. They were experts in those areas too. Like, you know, they were polymaths and they were different. They had all these different skill sets, which they were able to leverage in conjunction with Islam, or even for the sake of Islam, in order to achieve certain goals. And so I think that's one of the things we're trying to achieve as a company. In terms of, I guess, on the personal level, I think this is one of the biggest questions. Just like, you were making a lot of money and living in California and whatever, like, why'd you quit and go do this? Honestly, on the personal level, the answer is really simple, which is, alhamdulillah, this is, as I mentioned, like at the start of the podcast, I fundamentally believe this is the most impactful opportunity that I've ever been given, for sure, and likely will ever be given, just in terms of the number of people who can benefit from what I'm trying to achieve, as well as my unique skill set and my unique positioning in this place in order to actually achieve it. And so for me, to some degree, it was a no-brainer. It's like, I can now spend all of my time working for the sake of Allah, but in a way where I can also take care of my family, I can also meet my own personal needs, and, you know, I can have this impact, which inshallah will be accepted. So for me, it was easy in that regard, but it's still, you know, over time, when your paycheck looks like one thing and then it looks like something else or it doesn't exist, it's there's a shock. There's something that people have to overcome, and that challenge is not trivial or easy, because I think, as you mentioned earlier as well, like, people always want more. You know, if you're making $50,000, you want to start making $60,000, $70,000. You want to make $80,000, whatever. You get to that point, you're looking to make $100,000, $120,000, whatever. You have people who make millions of dollars and they're still looking to make more, and they're still looking at those who have more than them and looking. And this is really the nature of, you know, mankind's desire for success, for wealth, for fame, for all these kind of things. This is one of the challenges that we have. And so I think that no matter what stage you're at in your life, wherever you are in terms of how you feel your personal wealth is, I think that it's not going to get any easier. That's one of the things that I have to say up front. Your quality of life is going to change as you start to make more money, and you're just going to actually feel the opportunity cost even more to some degree. You go from a point where on the lower end of income, you're worried about stability and it's very risky to be able to start a startup or something like this. And on the higher end, sometimes you end up in a situation where, you know, you have all this wealth. You know, if you're going to take this opportunity, you're taking it from a place of privilege, but it's still a sacrifice for you in terms of, it's not like I have all this money and now I'm good, I'm done, like I don't need more. The reality is that's not how people's minds actually work. And so wherever you are in your journey, if you're interested in, you know, making this kind of trade-off, if this trade-off is necessary basically to make in terms of having the impact you want to have, then I think that's something you have to realize. It's not just going to get magically easier next year after you get promoted or something. You get promoted, now you're going to be like, oh, now I'm making more money. Now if I just wait till I'm a junior engineer, now I'm a senior engineer, I make more. Okay, when I become an engineering manager, I'm going to quit. Okay, when I become a director, I'm going to quit. Oh, but wouldn't it be great if there was a Muslim VP? Okay, you're just going to keep going down that path, and that's the end of it. So that's a decision I kind of had to reflect on it. I had to make istikhara. I had to, really think about it, make a conscious decision. But for me, alhamdulillah, it wasn't too difficult because I really believe in what I'm doing, and I believe in the opportunity. And so, I jumped into it, alhamdulillah.
SubhanAllah. I want to test the Tarteel app right now because what you just said reminded me of a verse. وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ عَاهَدَ اللَّهَ لَإِنْ آتَانَا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Okay. So this is verse 75 from Surah At-Tawbah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and there are some who had made a vow to Allah, if He gives us from His bounty, we will surely spend in charity and be of the righteous. The next verse, but when He gave them out of His bounty, they withheld it and turned away indifferently. So He caused hypocrisy to plague their hearts until the day they will meet Him for breaking their promise to Allah and for their lies. So subhanAllah, I'm not going to be making tafsir of these verses, but again, this is not a one-to-one mapping, but subhanAllah, this whole concept, these verses subhanAllah always come to mind as an attempt to remind myself. Again, this is not like passing judgment on anyone. It's just that subhanAllah, you get to derive, I guess, some meaning from the Quran.
Yeah, I think there's also like one other reality which people don't take into account, which is like, in the end of the day, you don't know when you're going to die. So, like, if you want to take this opportunity, you don't know that you're going to graduate, you don't know that you're going to have a family, you don't know you're going to live until you're 40, you don't know you're going to make this much money. Like, you don't know you're going to hit any of these milestones until you've hit them. Because in the end of the day, like, unfortunately, like, there are people who do pass away quite young. And so that's, I think, one of the other things which you should do whatever you can now, and you should do it as early as you can, in my opinion, and build from there. Always take those opportunities if they come up.
Exactly. And I think we heard this a lot in khutbahs. وَمَا قَلَّ وَكَفَى خَيْرٌ مِمَّا كَثَرَ وَأَلْهَى. What is, I guess, little and sufficient is better than what is plentiful and, alha. It's like, I don't know. Translation. I guess occupies you. That which is plentiful and keeps you occupied. Yeah. Something that's, I think the Khatib, I think they usually just say it in Arabic, so now I have the translation for it. So, like, not the best but translation, but we'll go with it. I think, so you kind of talked about what Tarteel is, but I guess we could maybe more formally define it for those who don't know it. يعني mashallah, the app speaks for itself. يعني I don't think you guys need to spend that much on advertising. You have shuyukh all over the world, subhanAllah. I was watching even like Arab shuyukh in Arabic living in all over the Arab world recommending the app. So alhamdulillah, يعني, it's amazing to see. May Allah reward you, of course. May Allah accept. May Allah reward you for every keystroke. But yeah, maybe I'll use this as an opportunity to ask you to just, tell us about what Tarteel is.
Yeah. So, what Tarteel is right now and where it's even continuing to grow is basically, we find that a lot of people really struggle to have the right tools to help them memorize outside of the time that they might be able to spend with a scholar. So a very common use case that we see in the West is somebody is, a student or is working and they have their busy life. They meet with an imam or some scholar or some hafiz in whichever country, and they recite to them, for example, half an hour a week. And the rest of the week, they're kind of trying to find time to recite and trying to find time to memorize and to do it on their own. And so Tarteel fills this gap where now anytime that you're not there working with, the imam or the scholar and whatnot, you have a tool that's actually able to listen to you as you recite. And then it comes even with a number of features to help you practice on your own. Like you can hide the words on the page, and you can even then peek at which words are coming next if you get stuck and things like this. So it's a full memorization experience that you can do on your own for actually memorizing. And then it keeps track of what mistakes you make, keeps track of how much you've been reciting, keeps track of what you've recited, and using all of that, it's able to do a number of things for you. It's able to help you with keeping the motivation and keeping a consistent pattern, things like streaks and other forms of gamification. It's also able to develop insights from what you've actually memorized to uncover what you've recited to uncover what you've memorized, and then to even help you plan what you should be memorizing next and what you need to review. So that's actually a lot of what's coming soon to the app, inshallah, is a lot of features specifically designed for people who are focused on memorizing to help them memorize and plan what they need to review, plan what they need to memorize, do it consistently, catch up if they fall behind, and go through that experience until they've completed their head, inshallah.
Inshallah. I actually wanted to, I guess, maybe talk, this is becoming more of a hot topic nowadays with the, popularization of generative AI. You have all these new AI models making AI very accessible to the common folk, layperson. It's something that now, I guess you probably get this question a lot because you were in the AI, in the machine learning space much before it was, I guess it was always, it's been popular for a while, but never has it been this popular. So do you ever see, a concerning trend of maybe people looking towards AI to, replace Muslim teachers in ways that it might not be able to yet? Do you see, what effect do you think this AI has on the traditional, some of our traditional ways of seeking knowledge, like the ijazat and whatnot?
Yeah, this is a question I get pretty commonly. I also see sometimes some concern in there in terms of you're taking away from the Quran teachers, you're taking away from this. And, like I mentioned just a minute ago, Tarteel is not meant to be the replacement towards scholars, the replacement towards Quran teachers or anything entirely. It's meant to be the supplement to help you on your journey in addition to those things. So for most things, like if you're studying in any domain, usually you have certain content that you need to learn, you have certain repetition and practice that you need to be able to do, and then you have whatever that real applied experience is. And I think dealing with the Quran and dealing with some things within Islam is where we lack a lot of those tools to exist for the time that you're away from that real experience. So like with the Quran, it's very easy to define in terms of, like I just said, where if you're sitting there with a scholar, that scholar can, listen to your tajweed, they can listen to how you're reciting exactly, they can give you correction, they have ijazah, they have a certain level of accuracy that they're able to ensure because they've memorized and they have the appropriate training, and they're able to help you in a certain capacity. But then the rest of the time when you're not with them, which is actually the majority of the time that most people are spending to revise and memorize, or even just to read the Quran, they don't have that available to them at all. So you're going from 100 and you're not even going to 60 or 50 or something or 20, you're literally going to 0 in terms of the support that you have. People are resorting to like taking a pencil or a piece of paper even to try to hide the words on the Quran, and they're coming up with these methods, but with technology now we can do much better. I think a similar thing needs to come about in terms of scholarship and Islam in general, where there's certain things which you really need like expert input from, and there's certain things which are very codified, very simple, and you just need to follow them. Like as a Muslim society, we've generally accepted that prayer times, for example, it's not AI, but it's technology. We've generally accepted that we no longer go to a scholar to sit there and come up with what time Dhuhr is. Like the computer can easily do these calculations for us, and everybody has a prayer times app on their phone and whatever, right? I think there's a place in between that when it comes to scholarship, where there is some opportunity for AI to come in and help facilitate access to information, especially. I think that's one of the things people have misunderstood with ChatGPT and with some of these technologies, where they use it expecting it to have a fundamental understanding of things, as opposed to be more of like an information retrieval tool and a tool to craft language in human patterns. And so they end up misapplying it. Like one of the examples I've seen is ChatGPT, for example, has trouble doing math a lot of the time, where you can give it what is relatively simple math for it to do, and it can give you the wrong answer, and it'll give it to you with full confidence. In the end of the day, it might perform very poorly at a task like math, but it can perform very well at producing large amounts of content or finding new answers. And so similarly within Islam, we have to be very careful where if people are trying to use things like ChatGPT to ask scholarly questions and come up with answers, to derive answers, they're going to get all kinds of disastrous results. And I've had a number of people reach out to me, or I've seen the work that they've done where they're basically trying to build, they call it different things, Islam GPT, Sheikh GPT, whatever they decide to call it. But it's all the same idea, which is, I can teach ChatGPT all of the hadith and the Quran and everything, and now it's my sheikh. It can answer all the questions for me.
It's contemporary madhab.
Yeah. This madhab is awful. Like, you ask it basic questions like how many times should I be praying a day, and it'll give you weird answers, and you're doing, it doesn't know that you're supposed to fast in Ramadan in this way and stuff like this. Like it doesn't know the 5 pillars properly. But in order to, in terms of applying them, but then like people are trying to rely on this for specific questions. So I think that there's areas where, especially in the context of Islamic scholarship, there's a lot of challenges that have to be resolved in terms of better surfacing information. Like the fact that we're talking about a Western society where lots of people are searching in English, but a lot of scholarship historically has not been in English, it's been in Arabic. So how do you even accurately represent these ideas and allow them to be searchable in people's native languages? I think that's still an unresolved problem that needs to be explored. And then once you have that, how can you then build tooling that can help people find the answers to what they're looking for? Maybe that AI shouldn't necessarily be giving the answer, but maybe it can be helping you find the relevant hadith so that you have a place to do that research yourself, for example. And so that's one of those challenges there where I think people who don't really understand the risks that are involved are just jumping into this from a technology perspective, and I think it's very dangerous ethically and morally, because you're giving people the tools that will misguide them actually, and you're going to be held accountable for doing that. Whenever you build any kind of technology, in the end of the day, it can be used positively, it can be used negatively. Are you responsible for how people use it? Not necessarily, but are you responsible for thinking about that and having it as part of the considerations? For sure. this is one of the things that I always like to go back to, like this example where the man who invented the AK-47, in the end of the day, he invented it with a specific intention, which is, I'm going to build this assault rifle so that the army is able to use it and protect my people, protect my homeland. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Like this is in the end of the day, this is this is for the benefit of his own people. It's for the preservation of their lives in a just way. But all of a sudden now, if you take a look at the AK-47 today, it's been used for all kinds of things. Like it's used in terrorism, it's used in illegal occupations, it's used in all kinds of violence around the world and stuff, because of, in the end of the day, the technology was good, basically, in terms of how it worked, and people have adopted it now for whatever purpose they want, and those purposes are not necessarily the original purpose. So it's quite an extreme example in the sense of, okay, you're talking about a gun, but like this applies to technology well beyond that. I mean, I worked at Facebook. I think this is another very clear example of how this applies. Facebook has so many use cases which are of extreme benefit to people. I remember when I worked at Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg every Friday would do like an address and answer questions from the employees inside the company. And one of the things that was often done within the company is that there was basically this team inside the company that would put together these videos showcasing how Facebook was like being used and like benefiting people and stuff. So I saw some really wonderful, incredible things as part of that. Like, for example, some people who have like a very rare disease, like 1 in 10 million or 1 in a million or whatever, would go and they would make a Facebook group about that disease, and other people who have that disease would be able to connect through that group till you've got 1,000, 10,000 or something in that group. They're able to share resources, they're able to support each other, they're even able to come and organize through that group in order to pressure certain like pharmaceutical companies to actually work on creating cures and treatments and whatnot for their disease and actually get those made. On an individual level, those people would have never found each other, but then using the technology, they're able to solve problems in a great way that's of immense benefit. At the same time though, you have the other side where Facebook has been used for all kinds of violence in many countries, like in Burma and in India, for example. You have clear cases and examples and records where it's been used to spread hate, it's been used to spread misinformation, and this is often actually targeted against the Muslim community, whether it's in these countries or in other countries, even in the West. Like we see anti-Islam and anti-Muslim activity on these platforms is something that's generally left well beyond where it should be, and so that has an impact, right? That leads to people dying in some places. That leads to all kinds of hate crimes. That leads to all kinds of issues. In the end of the day, you have a responsibility when you're building technology to think about these things and understand the impact. So if you're going to be the next one to build Sheikh GPT or whatever, are you going to help people find information that's actually going to help them practice their deen properly? Or are you going to help them find quick answers that are going to lead them astray? I think that's one of the first questions you should be asking yourself before you write a single line of code.
SubhanAllah, that's so true. So you mentioned many of the ways that ChatGPT or Sheikh GPT should not be used, like this generative AI technology. But have there been any positive ways in which maybe you have adopted it in your workflow, like as Tarteel? And do you think that that it might bring forth any interesting, exciting opportunities?
So I think I personally use it as part of my workflows outside of producing Islamic content. Like I personally use it as part of my job for various different tasks. There's certainly a benefit to technology, especially when it comes to producing content. You gotta write out an email or write a presentation or a thank you letter or something. We have to produce a bunch of content. It has actually a decent ability to produce that content in a very nicely structured way with good language and stuff like that, and then you can adjust it. Even interestingly enough, I've used it for some like talks to Islamic audiences, and when I give it that context, it'll start with Assalamu alaikum, and like it will use our Islamic terminology as part of the content it produces. But in terms of for solving for this space, like in terms of solving for this, I think there's huge opportunities for the information retrieval. I think the question becomes, how do we build in the right safeguards such that it's providing answers with the right context, and it's not providing answers that people are taking to be the truth. That's one of the biggest problems that I think will have to be addressed. But for information retrieval as a whole, I think having that kind of natural language interface where you can ask questions and find answers, find related ideas, consult basically in that way is quite important, because similar to the issue of finding Quran teachers and having access to a Quran teacher 24/7 all the time, I mean, you have the issue of finding access to scholars, especially knowledgeable scholars who have all the correct context. And so there are questions which are simple to answer if given the right information, and helping people to be able to find those answers in a timely way wherever they are. I think that's a quite important thing that we should be solving for, and that technology will definitely help.
Jazakumullah khair. I'm thinking about it now, like that maybe Tarteel, by taking up some of that load that some of the scholars have when it comes to teaching Quran, again, not diminishing their role, but kind of helping them maybe focus on things that are more needed. That could be another avenue for benefits from your app.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. I wanted to, with the time we have left, maybe we wanted to bring it back to the community, the Muslim community in McMaster, or just students in general. You mentioned before how you would, try to always give back to the Muslim community with whatever way you could. I think a question is, like, at what point do you know that basically you're being held accountable? Like, you should be doing more. You should be, giving back. And I ask this because, like I mentioned in the beginning, a lot of people, you could say they almost start from scratch when they come to university. So there's not much that they could help with, maybe Islamically. So they're like quickly learning. But at what point do they start to? What point do they become responsible to give back? Essentially, is what I'm trying to ask.
Yeah, I think the scope of tasks that are needed in order to support the community is so vast that you can start from any point. I think the misconception people have is that I shouldn't be involved in Islamic work until I'm a scholar. I think that you shouldn't be involved with certain types of Islamic work until you're knowledgeable enough. Like, don't be doing this like street dawah and stuff like this when you don't know the basics of the deen, for example, right? I think that's a very simple, obvious example. Or don't be trying to give religious opinions and fatwa and stuff when, again, you don't have any knowledge on it. That's not the right place for it. However, there's so many ways to get involved. There's so many ways to be of benefit to people, and your Islamic knowledge is not the only way. Going back to that whole discussion we had about what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, if there's an event that's being held where they're having a scholar come in, you don't need to be that scholar. That event has all kinds of logistics to figure out. It has all kinds of setup to be done. It has all kinds of preparation and advertising and all kinds of logistics that are involved with that kind of event. And many of those logistics don't require a specific skill set. Some of them you can even offload to ChatGPT now. So when it comes to those kind of things, like, there's so many ways to start to get involved. And we talk about as well, Islamically, who your friend group has a big impact on you. You always want to be in good company and with the right people around you. And I think becoming involved in Islamic service is a great way to be finding better people to be around you who will help you grow in the direction that you're looking for. And so I would say if somebody is still unsure of how they can get involved, whatever organization that you reach out to in general, they need more support. Very, very few Islamic organizations at any level, whether it's your MSA in your university, or whether it's your local charity, or whether it's your local masjid, or whatever it is, very few of them are like, yes, we have all the money we need, we have all the resources we need, we have all the manpower we need, everything is great, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. Like, all of them would be happy with an extra pair of hands, or whatever that you can provide, or extra donations, or whatever way that you are able to support with what Allah SWT has given you. You can find organizations where you can give back. The other thing I mentioned earlier as well is, I think it's really valuable when people use skill sets that they have towards contributing in that specific way. Like an interesting example is, I don't know if you're familiar with like Habitat for Humanity, for example. So Habitat for Humanity is a charity. It's not a Muslim charity, but they basically focus on building housing for individuals who are struggling to get access to housing. So this is a fully Islamically aligned mission, like helping people to actually have a roof to cover their heads. Perfectly Islamically solid thing to be working on. The kind of people that they need to help, aside from the logistics and the office management and stuff, they need people who have experience basically with construction and contracting and stuff like this, because they're building homes and they're taking stuff out of homes and they're doing all these kind of trades work, right? And so if that's the direction, for example, within which you have skills, even if it's not an Islamic charity, you can go and help in that way. In the end of the day, this is still going to be counted in your good deeds, regardless of whether the charity is a Muslim or not. The impact that you're having is, with the right intentions, is of benefit. And again, even you being there as a Muslim is also, just one way or another, it's going to end up being dawah, right? So there's so many of these examples you can find. Like, I know, even just in terms of Muslim charities, we've got Muslim charities for food banks, for mental health, for all kinds of social work, like dealing with domestic violence and dealing with all kinds of things. We've got Muslim charities trying to educate people about how to deal with finances and become more financially responsible. We have charities doing humanitarian work. We have charities doing political work, like the Canadian Muslim Vote is trying to get people to, be engaged with politics. You have charities in really so many domains who are needing such a wide skill set of tasks that I'm sure if you're motivated, you can find something that aligns with areas in which you individually have skills or want to grow, and you can find ways to get involved there too. I think those kind of things are great, because you need to make sure in those cases that you're doing it with the right intention, but you go in there and you get both benefits, right? You get to benefit in terms of being very specifically suitable for the tasks being done, even growing potentially your connections and your skill set in that space, as well as giving back. One of the things that actually happened to me in my career, a lot of the doors that have been opened in my personal life and career, is, in the end of the day, like, Allah SWT is the one who opens up everything, and you don't know where it's coming from. So like, I remember when I started work on Iqra, what became Tarteel, I had like lots of questions about certain decisions I need to make around the app, how to publish it and how to do different things. And I went looking for people who like have this kind of experience. So I met a brother who makes an app called Quran for Android. And that app actually is like one of the most downloaded Android Quran apps. And like that brother, like, may Allah accept from him and multiply everything he's done. Like, he's had such a huge impact across the world, and people don't know who he is. But he actually, it turned out when I was speaking with him that he worked at Facebook. Like at the time I was speaking with him, he was working at Facebook. And when I actually was applying to go work there, he's actually the one who put in my referral to the position. So, like in the end of the day, like doors, you pursue one thing with the right intentions, Allah SWT will open up whatever doors are needed for you to go on the right path, inshallah. So you don't know where the benefit is coming from, just focus on doing the right things with the right intention, and leave the rest to Allah SWT.
SubhanAllah. Okay, so one last question that we had is regarding something that you mentioned previously, which is that you see a lot of Muslims in these, in in this context, we're talking about tech companies, but even everywhere, you see Muslims occupying high-ranking positions, and doing some, I guess, meaningful work in the context of their organizations. However, like their footprint isn't, you don't see them in the Muslim community much. Maybe you'll see them in the masjid praying, but you don't really see much, much impact coming from their end. So maybe I was wondering what your view was about how the Muslim community can, I guess, benefit more from this underutilized talent.
So I think there's two sides to this. There's the side of the community not making the right asks, and there's also the side of sometimes those people, for whatever reason, are not able to step in either of their own accord or to fulfill those asks. And it can be a deficiency in the person, or it can be that that person simply has certain circumstances or challenges or context or whatever, for whichever reason they're unable to come and fulfill that role. And so I can't speak to this in terms of if this person is a VP in this big tech company and I don't see them being involved with the Muslim community. I mean, at the end of the day, they're doing whatever they're doing behind the scenes. You have no idea. Maybe they take half their salary and they donate it to charities, and nobody's going to know except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in the end of the day, may Allah reward them for that. So I think we can't judge as a generic class those people who fall within that kind of definition of having achieved great success within their career within a secular context. But I think one of the areas of deficiency I see actually comes from the community specifically, in the sense that the community often doesn't make the right asks. So we do have very successful individuals in the Muslim community for all kinds of spaces, whether it's business and entrepreneurship, whether it's medicine, whether it's engineering, whether it's any area that you can think of. There's probably some Muslims who are successful in that area, as long as it's a halal area. I think the thing is that as a community, we need to see how we can better engage those individuals. So there might be projects that the community wants to pursue where having that kind of expertise would actually go a long way, and we should be figuring out how to find and identify those people and then bring them in to advise and support on those kinds of projects. If I have a doctor who specializes in certain types of diseases and things like this, if there's Muslims who are working on better integration with the hospitals, for example, so that Muslims can go and support other Muslims who are in the hospital and in need of support in that time. People in the hospital, with experience dealing with the hospital, will at least be able to help with the policies and how to enter and what to say and what to do and things like this, to advise on facilitating that kind of arrangement. And any other area, we can come up with many examples, but the community making the right asks from those types of individuals is quite important. And sometimes those people will find themselves well in a strategic place where they can unlock certain things for the community, and that's one of the things we should be looking for as well. I think we always picture politicians as being the ones who we should be looking for. We look for politicians to be in politics and then they can represent the interests of the Muslim community. In the end of the day, the reality is a lot of the way the country runs is through lobbying. This is true in many places. It's certainly true in Canada. The reality of it is that's the case, right? You building a united front and having that lobbying and having that connection with the politicians, whether the politician is Muslim or not, that will have an impact, right? So who are the best people to even be lobbying for certain things in certain fields? It's people who are successful. If I get the CEO of a hospital network who's coming to me saying Muslims are opposed to something related to abortion or medically assisted dying or different topics like this or whatever, it's very different than some random Joe who's walking in from some random Ahmed who's walking in from the street, basically, who's saying you guys should be doing this and whatever. Very different approach, very different set of qualifications. The message is going to come off very differently, and the impact it's going to have is very different as well. So even when it comes to things like that, whether it's lobbying within society, whether it's being able to move forward certain projects, whether it's even inspiring the youth, for example. How do we inspire the youth to pursue careers that will allow them to benefit people and be successful and give back and all these kind of things? There's so many areas where we can be involving these individuals, but we just have to make the right asks, I think. That will lead to the most benefit for the community overall.
Jazakumullah khair. Jazakumullah khair for the, I guess, last hour and a half. Actually, wait, let me cut that because we don't know how long it's going to be.
Sure.
Jazakumullah khair. You've shared a very eye-opening perspective to many of these questions, at least for myself, and I'm sure for many of us watching and listening. I guess maybe to conclude, I'm going to bring it back to Tarteel, your app. I was wondering if you wanted to use this platform to share any exciting announcements that you have, anything you want to plug, whether it be Tarteel related or else.
Yeah, so if you haven't tried Tarteel, certainly you should try it out, regardless of where you are in your journey with the Quran or your journey with memorization. We're building a lot of stuff right now that helps our Hufaz in particular, because there's so much opportunity to benefit them significantly with the technology. But honestly, even if you're just struggling to read the Quran on a regular basis and develop those habits and understand the Quran and everything, you can find a lot of tools in Tarteel to help you stay consistent with your journey, with your goals, actually reach them and understand the Quran and develop that relationship. So I do encourage everybody, if they're able to check out Tarteel. You can download the app on iOS or Android. Or you can go to our website, tarteel.ai, to learn more. Certainly check it out, try it out, give us your feedback. Inshallah, we're looking to build this to be as useful for you as possible and to benefit Muslims all around the world. So inshallah, try that out. And if you feel that something that was said today is of benefit, then alhamdulillah, inshallah, that will be accepted for me. And if I said anything wrong, then inshallah, this is something that I can be forgiven for. And if there's any other way that we can be of benefit, or I can be of benefit individually, then please don't hesitate to reach out, and inshallah we can help Muslims together.
Yeah, Jazakumullah khair, Mohammed, for everything. Jazakumullah khair. The sacrifice you made has paid in dividends, and this is not just by my own account, but by the account of basically everyone I know who knows the app. It's been well received, and I guess people singing praises about the app. Maybe everyone except for Tarawih Imams, because now we have all the congregants correcting them. But even that I think is a very positive thing. Alhamdulillah. So Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward you again for every keystroke, for you and your entire team. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a success, make it weigh heavily on your scales on the Day of Judgment. And to the audience, I would like to thank you very much for listening to our first episode of the podcast. So stay tuned at McMaster MSA. This episode will be the first of many that will be released on a monthly basis. So I guess stay tuned. The episodes will be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Jazakumullah khair. Why did I say as well? Some people will listen to it on Spotify. Whatever.